Right. Okay.
Right. Okay, let's go. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Rabbi Danksy. I am the rabbi from Cranbrook United Synagogue, and I was very kindly asked by Stephen Jacobson to share a few thoughts with you on this week's parasha. And I think if ever there was, just one thing, Stephen, you owe me a breakfast. Just putting it out there. You owe me a breakfast.
Yeah.
Okay. So Noach is a fantastic parasha, especially for us. I think for people who have been through the pandemic and are still going through the pandemic. Because if we think about it, the entire episode of Noach seeing destruction around him, seeing a plague which devastates the whole world, is something which unfortunately we've also experienced. And I think there's a huge amount to learn in this week's parsha about how we should be living our lives and how we should be reacting to the pandemic. Thank God things are definitely getting better in the UK, but the rest of the world seems to be going through difficulties. So I think it's still a very appropriate and very important that we talk about it. So there are three basic ideas which I want to share with you. And I think I'm going to start off with the first one with you. So if I share my screen with you, and you will see that in the building of the ark, the Torah says, Tsar, ta'aseh lateva. You need to make a Tsar. We don't exactly know what the word Tsar means. You need to make a Tsar for the Teva. And then the Torah says, and terminated with a cubit at the top. And put a opening to the Teva on the side. So you need to make it with 3 decks. It needs to be a 3-decker ark, and you need to make a Tsar. Now, what is a Tsar? So the rabbis are quite interested in this whole story, and the Bereshis Rabbah, which is quoted by Rashi, says Tsar. So if you see over here, Genesis on Rashi and Genesis, Tsar light. So Rashi says some say that it was a window, and others say that it was a precious stone that gave light to them. 2 explanations: either it was literally a window that Noah could look out of, or alternatively, it was a gem, a beautiful, fantastic gem, which provided and refracted, I would suppose, whatever light that was available from outside into the ark. And I've got a very, very simple question. And that is, what difference does it make whether it was a window or whether it was a precious stone? What do we care whether it was a window which Noah could look out of or a precious stone? And why does Noah need to have this in his ark? Why did Noah need to have a window in the ark? Perhaps you could say that he needed it so he'd be able to see when there was going to be land. But we see later on that he didn't know there was land until he sent out the raven or the dove to find out when he would be able to see the. And so why is it then? Definitely for Stephen, it's true. It does make a big difference at night. But I think the truth is that what difference does it make, essentially? What are the rabbis really arguing about? So if I could just have some audience participation, so please feel free to put your hand up. What do you think is the difference between having a window and between having a massive gem in the thing? So if you want to just put up your hands, I think there's a way to put up your hands. Can you think of any ways in which there's any difference between a window and a beautiful stone? Any thoughts as to what difference it would have made for Noah?
Can I offer us a thought? May I?
Yes. Go for it. Who's this?
Stephen here again. It wasn't directly a facetious remark about nighttime, because there is a big difference between being able to see what's naturally out there, and also if you think about being able to tend for the animals, etc., etc. being provided with light per
Yes.
se, being provided with light per se by whatever mechanism is available, without changing the natural order of sunshine.
Yes.
I think philosophically makes a very, very big difference.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can imagine being without any light, if there's a blackout, it's very, very uncomfortable. I think that's a really good point. So, do you think that it was, and how do you think that was facilitated through that like precious stone, through that diamond, whatever he was using as a window?
Well, God could have made 24 hours of light, or provided Noah himself, where the rest of the world was kind of in a kind of a darkness, as it were, with the flood. Provided Noah with light for him and his purpose.
Right. So when you're saying that it was a precious stone that gave light to them, so that you would say that is a greater kindness to Noah than a window.
Precisely.
Excellent. Okay, that's brilliant. Okay, let's add it on there. Let's try and give it a bit of context. You can imagine God says, no, go and tells Noah, you know something, listen, it's time for us to get on to the ark. And they all get on to the ark, Noah and his son and his wife and all the animals, and they start floating. What do you think if there was a window they would have seen? What would they have seen as they go on in their journeys down this flood? Barry, yes, Barry gets the first prize, water. What else would they have seen?
They'd have seen people drowning.
They would have seen people drowning. Wow. They would have seen all the people around them drowning. Can you imagine how traumatic that would have been for Noah? How difficult that would have been for Noah to see all these people around him literally drowning. Okay. And why do you think God would have wanted him to see such a thing? What do you think was the message that God would be saying to him, saying, look at all these people around you who have died, who have passed away? What do you think would be the message for them, for Noah?
It's a punishment for people who do bad.
Right. So look what happens to those people who do bad. Noah, be careful not to do a bad thing. That's absolutely true. Second of all, I would imagine there is a certain level of, look what I've done for you. In other words, help me out here a little bit.
Hello there.
Hi.
Yeah, I think it's also about leadership. There are people that can see what's going on for themselves, but they can't see what's going on outside for others. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a real eye-opener. We have, if you look at the various governments, it doesn't matter what colour they are, what they believe in, they can only see what's in there for them. I've just read that an accountancy company decided not to give so many bonuses, but maybe you should put it into profit for the business. In other words, they can only see inside and they're not looking outside. Their jewel is them, and it reflects what they need.
Right.
On the other hand, I think it could have been a tremendous cruelty to Noah, to him, a man as sensitive and as caring and as concerned about doing the right thing like Noah. For him, it would have been a devastating thing to see everybody else drowning. He was righteous in his time, but as a righteous man, surely that means that he's sensitive to the failings of others and the destruction of others, it must have been an awful thing to witness.
But maybe he didn't do enough to try and convert people or lead people while he had the chance. He didn't do much to get them back from their evil ways.
Champion, is that Vita?
Yeah.
Thank you, Vita. That's that. Okay, so that's really where I'd like to go towards. I'd like to go towards that direction. I think absolutely there's this question of insularity versus. I think your husband said this. Just said that, Vita. You know, there's difference between insularity and being able to look out on the world and see what's going on. Noah is all on a certain level being punished by saying, you know something, look what's happening around you, and you didn't really help the situation. You didn't go and convert enough people. You didn't help people enough. we remember that there's a discussion in the sages as to whether Noah was righteous in his time or objectively he was righteous.
Yeah.
So we can see over here this argument being played out over here. Was it a window? Was this that in order for Noah to see, you know something, you did good, Noah, you were saved. God was very kind to you, but do you know something? Maybe you weren't as kind as you should have been to your generation. And that is the message which is being given. And it's an incredibly traumatic message to Noah, to say to him, you know something, Noah, you could have done more. You should have done more. That is the opinion that says that what? There was a window. On the other hand, to say that it was a gem, what do you think that would express to window? So we are already going in a lovely direction, saying that it was a greater kindness to Noah because he got light even at night, and that makes a massive psychological difference to a man who had to be in the dark literally nearly all the time. But what else do you think that it says? Just carrying on with that line. Do you think that God is making Noah responsible for what's happened? If you think that it was a beautiful stone?
There's a story about two people that have given a piece of a pane of glass. One can see outwards and the other can just see it as a mirror. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, so if you think that that gem is a mirror of Noah's righteousness, what God is saying to him is, Noah, you're not responsible for what happened. There's nothing that you could have done for the people around you. You aren't responsible for their downfall. Whatever's happening is outside of you. It's external to you. You in yourself are a little bubble in which, you know, everything is good, but everything outside you, not so good. But you know what, Noah, you don't have to see it. You don't have to see it because you yourself did your best. You were righteous. You did build the ark. You did try your best. So, you know, there's always this question of, did I do as much as I could have? And I think that this is always the question that we always ask ourselves in social circumstances. Somebody just came and knocked on my door for some money, and unfortunately I didn't have any money for her. And imagine this lady coming all the way from Golders Green or from the Golden Medina of Northwest London all the way to Ilford in order to come and collect money. And I was very, very upset that I couldn't give her money. But the fact is I had none on me. Is it enough to say, you know something, I'm really sorry. If I had, I would give you. Or is it enough to say, no, you know something, you need to wait, I'll go to the ATM, I'll come back, I'll drop it off at you. Okay, look, I know that's bringing my own little guilt trip into the whole story, but the question is always, do we do enough? And the one opinion over here is that Noach was righteous, b'doirosov, in his generation, in the fact that he tried to take care of them. And the truth is that there was nothing he could have done. Or are we saying, hold on a second, Noah, you should have done more. You could have done more. And your punishment for not doing more is seeing the results of your actions and seeing all these dead bodies. How terrible, literally floating around you in the world. Okay, so that was my first idea. The second idea, which I'd like to share with you, is about the actual reason for the flood in the first place. So let's have a look at that. I'm going to share with you now. So let's get this whole story. So if you look at the pasuk, it says, "Vayomer Elohim Noach." God says to Noach, "Kates kol basar ba lefanai." The end of all flesh has come in front of me. Why? Ki malo haaretz chamos mipneihem. Because the land is filled with lawlessness. V'nini mashki samas haaretz, and behold, I am going to destroy the world. So Rashi says over here, Ki malo haaretz chamos. Says Rashi's interested in the reason for the destruction of the world. Rashi previously, I'm just give you a background, says that they did all sorts of other bad things to each other. But this idea of Hamas, which is referring to Gezel, about stealing from one another, he says that was the most serious crime that they could have committed. Loi nechtam gezar dinam, says Rashi, their decree, Gezar dinom, like on Rosh Hashanah, their decree was sealed by what? Ela al hagezel, on stealing from one another. And I would like to just kind of also again stop the share and maybe pose the question to you all. Why do you think that stealing is such a serious thing, taking from one another is such a serious thing to cause the destruction of the entire world? Any ideas?
Stealing means kidnapping.
Stealing means kidnapping. That is true.
Slavery.
Okay. So maybe they were enslaving one another. That is a nice interpretation, Arnie. The only issue that I've got with it is that when the Torah talks about kidnapping, it actually does so in the Ten Commandments. So it says, Lo tignov, which means don't literally kidnap, according to the commentators. However, it's interesting to note that Gezel in the Talmud as well is referring to taking something from somebody else by force. Yeah, I'm taking something. Let's say you've got like to what's the word when you go and if a person, God forbid, should go and take something from somebody else, to go and if you see them on the street and they just literally take your wallet from you.
Pickpockets.
Pickpockets.
Mugging.
Mug. There we go. To be mugged. This is what we're referring to. The reason why the world was destroyed was because of mass mugging. Ladies and gentlemen, let's just do a bit of general knowledge. What are the 3 cardinal sins which a Jewish person should rather die than transgress?
Ilya Royce, Shvita.
Yeah. And Avodah Zarah. The three big ones, right? Murder, idolatry, immorality. Those are serious crimes. Those are bad things. So if they are bad things, why is it that God decides to go and bash the entire humanity just because they were constantly pickpocketing and mugging one another? Any thoughts? And if there aren't, that's all right. Yes, Mrs. Hoffman.
Don't have any thought for how other people are going to feel.
Right, so they had no consideration for other people's feelings.
Yes.
Okay. I definitely hear that, and I think that that's a bad thing. I'll definitely agree with you there. Let me provide with you a beautiful Meshech Chochmah. This is Rav Meir Simcha from Dvinsk. He lived in the early 20th century and the end of the 19th century. And he says like this. He says that there is a difference between individual sins and communal sins. And there's a difference which takes place between when something happens and becomes ingrained and becomes a part of societal mores and norms,
Yes.
which is incredibly dangerous.
Yes.
So he says something amazing. He says, generally, on an individual level, the most dangerous sins are those big 3. You know, the dangerous things to do, shouldn't do. They damage you on a spiritual level in all sorts of ways, which we don't have time to talk about. However, when on a societal level, there is such a lack of care for one another,
Yes.
that people simply do not care or give 1 penny for another person. And in fact, even if the person's got a penny, to go and be a penny pincher, in such a circumstance, those sins are even worse than any individual sins which might occur. And he brings a proof from the story of Ahab and Jezebel. Ahab, we know, wasn't the best of kings in the northern kingdom. And he caused, or he, and more importantly, through his wife, who was literally a Jezebel, caused the Jewish people in the northern kingdom to sin in various ways by serving idols and being immoral and doing all of things, but they were incredibly successful in battle, and God was with them. And the point which he wants to make out over here is that God stays with the Jewish people when their sins are on individual levels. But when an entire society becomes so incredibly corrupt that it loses the capacity to actually have any care or concern for the other person, like was mentioned by Mrs. Hoffman, then on a societal level, the reason for the world existing and people existing in that framework ends. Now that's very, very beautiful, because that gives us an understanding why stealing from one another on a societal level was so dangerous and causes God to decide to destroy the world. How is the world fixed up? How do we fix up the world? Now, we know that Noah went on to the ark, and he went on to the ark for a specific amount of days. Anybody know how many days and how many nights? 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days and 40 nights reminds us of what? 40 is a very important number. Two things happened with 40. Moses was up 40 days and 40 nights, absolutely.
Mikvah for Tsar.
Huh? Beg your pardon?
Mikvah for Tsar.
Mikvah is 40 Tsar. And I think there's a huge connection between all of these things. 40 Tsar Mikvah, and 40 days for the gestation of a child. A child becomes a kayam, a child in a mother's womb becomes viable after 40 days. Yes. So what is happening over here is that there's a creation of something new. The world without Torah and the world with Torah becomes a different world through Torah. 40 days and 40 nights, Moses was in the world because he was creating a new world. 40 Sayah, right, is the mount in a mikveh. Beautiful, beautiful. Why? Because it signals the opportunity for new life, which occurs when after a woman is pure and she's able to be intimate with her husband. 40 days of gestation, again, the idea of new world. And what was Noah doing to build his brave new world? What was Noah involved in?
Saving any animals.
He was taking care of other people. He was taking care of other beings. He was taking care of the lions and the tigers and the bears, oh my. He was taking care of the ants, and he was taking care of the plants, and he was taking care of his wife, and he was taking care of his family. And through that process, he was creating a new normal by which the world could be recreated. And the world becomes recreated through chesed, through kindness. And there's a verse which comes from Tehillim, which is very important. Olam chesed yibanu, that the world is built on kindness. And when the world is built on kindness, that causes the world to regenerate. It becomes new, it becomes habitable again. And this is how Noah goes and fixes up what has been broken. And therefore, if we think, just to summarize and to end off, if we think about what's happened in the UK and how people have been so supportive to one another during this pandemic, and how wonderful the NHS has been, and how wonderful our neighbors have been towards us, and how wonderful we have been towards our neighbors and our friends, and how the Jewish community has cohered together, and how we're all working together. This is a perfect response to have gone through such a plague, to have gone through the flood. If you want to recreate the world, there's only one way to do it, and that is kindly. So with those thoughts, it's 9:27. I've got exactly 3 minutes until the end. I'd like to thank you so much for joining together with me and for having this collaborative talk, because I love hearing your perspectives and your views. And it was really a pleasure to be with you. And thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Danksy, for joining us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for
it's a pleasure.
very interesting talk on so everyone have a good day. Have a good week. Chodesh Tov for tomorrow. And we'll see you all again next week. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.